Listen to the All in My Head podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Please, allow me to show you something.
Welcome back. You're listening to the All in My Head podcast. I'm Jenny, and I am your host for all things happening in my head. Today's episode is episode 5, and this one is called The People Pleaser's Dilemma, Acts of Service or Acts of Pressure. This is a good one, and I have been thinking about this for a while. It has been on my mind for quite some time, as I like to joke and say I'm a reformed people pleaser. But I got to talking with one of my closest friends yesterday, and you'll hear me talk about my GBGs. This is my group of girlfriends for 20 years now that I got to know through working at a local elementary school back in Connecticut. And we just have this super special bond. I'm big on acronyms, and I love a nickname. And so I will get into at some point what GBGs actually stands for. But that will probably be on an episode with the GBGs, because one in particular forgets what the name means all the time. So I will probably call her out on that and see what she has to say, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that. But in talking with this friend yesterday, we were talking about kind of the era that we grew up in. We're both right over 50 years old now. So we were talking about the era in which we were raised. And yeah, we're those people now. Like we say, back in my day, so-and-so talked about this, and this was not allowed. So we're those people now that talk about back in my day. And, you know, we talked about kind of being seen and not heard. That was the era. Things were very like black and white. They were one way or another. It was a strict upbringing. I talked a little bit about that in my first episode. And I'll talk about it in future episodes as well in a different kind of way. But we were talking about how, you know, kind of our love languages and how being a people pleaser can really diminish your spirit. And I definitely was a people pleaser for as long as I can remember. I mean, you know, I kind of grew up in this household where I needed to fight for attention, and I didn't really fit in. I also didn't really fit in outside of the home, you know, aside from a core group of one or two friends. But that was something that I kind of utilized to, you know, make sure that people liked me. You know, I fought for attention in my home, and, you know, I wanted to make sure that somebody liked me, and, you know, even in my own home. So being made to believe that you're not worthy and you're always seeking love definitely brings out that people pleaser. And you tend to kind of do whatever somebody wants you to do because it makes them happy, or you think it will make them happy. So that was something that, you know, from my trauma, and again, we'll talk about trauma in future episodes, but that I thought was normal. I definitely thought doing all the things would make people happy. And so people pleasing to me was just natural, normal, but it was exhausting at the same time. Because, you know, you're always fighting for recognition, for love, for acknowledgement. And it's something that, again, can just be exhausting. But when you think it's just the norm, and that's the normal in your world, it's what you do. Now, it wasn't until much later on that I realized that, you know, acts of service is my love language. I love doing things for people that I love, to make them happy, whether that's, you know, cooking a holiday meal or bringing them a special treat that they love, or finding that perfect gift for them. I'm very in tune when somebody talks to me about something that they love, or something that is special to them, or even something that they've said, oh, at some point I would love to get this. You know, if I see it, I buy it and I send it to them. And it's my way of saying I love you and I hear you and you're seen. So to me, that is my way of expressing love. But it wasn't that way early on. I, felt my feelings were invalidated a lot of the time, and it wasn't really an option for me. It was kind of something I was forced into. So, it's kind of that moment of saying, is it an act of pressure or is it people pleasing? Is it a people pleasing thing, or is it really an act of service? If you're being pressured into it, then certainly it's not an act of service. It's pressure, and you're feeling that pressure to be seen, be heard, be loved. And I would say that was something I struggled with for most of my childhood, my adolescence, and even in my adulthood, because I didn't feel that I was able to say no to something. Like, no was not an option growing up. It was looked at as a word that was super disrespectful. Like, if you said no to someone, you were being disrespectful. And you can see now as an adult, and having had my own children and seeing them grow up and have their own children, how saying yes to everything is super damaging. Like, saying no is okay. It's not, a bad word. But that is how we grew up. And in talking with my friend yesterday, we were saying how that just wasn't an option. You were, in the background, you were a child, you never said no, you were respectful. And, if you said no to something, you were being disrespectful. And that is where that pressure comes into play. As you grow up and as you become an adult, and then you have your own children, and you see that saying yes to everything is exhausting and it is damaging to your mind and your spirit. And there are just those people. And early on in my life, those people were the people who were in my closest inner circle. And even if you said yes to everything, it wasn't going to have you be seen in a more positive light. It wasn't going to put you on the higher part of the pedestal per se, and it wasn't going to kind of help your cause and your place. So as much as I tried to people please and to do all the right things and to say all the right things, it wasn't going to help. And I didn't know that as a child or as an adolescent or as a young adult. And so many of my relationships were based on that people pleasing, saying yes to everything, being looked at in a specific light, making sure that I looked like, I was that person who was raised to be the yes girl. That's exhausting. And it is a process of growing up and becoming older, but also it's learning your worth and learning to know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And in turn, it's also an unlearning of the things that you're taught are okay. In narcissistic relationships, a person will make you feel guilty for not saying yes to everything that they want, but also kind of make you feel like you're literally losing your mind because you did all the things that they wanted you to do, and you said yes to all the things, and you did all the things that would please that person, yet they're still not happy. So it is really an unlearning of the things that we are taught. And as women, especially societally, we are supposed to be, prim and proper, say yes, smile, grin and bear it, do all the things. We raise the children, we work the job, and we do it all seamlessly, and we say yes to all the things and all the people and all the activities, and put on these amazing holidays and go to all the family members and relatives' houses and smile and show up and be present. And again, it's exhausting, as a woman. And it is kind of finding this balance of saying yes to the things that you feel happy doing, especially if it's your love language in you want to give someone something or be of service to them and show them your love and admiration, but also not feeling like it's an act of pressure, like you don't have a choice. Because in those types of relationships, it's not healthy. So why would we want to be that person who says yes to everything? So, again, like I said, and acts of service is my love language. I enjoy making someone happy and be seen, and especially if it's surrounding food, like I said, or a meal or a holiday. But early on, those lines got blurred for me. Was I trying to buy someone's love, or was it actually an act of service? Was it an act of pressure? And again, I had to learn this by growing up and seeing what worked and what didn't work for me. If it wasn't going to feel good in my heart and in my soul, why am I doing that? Am I doing it for the other person? Am I doing it to make them ultimately happy and giving them a piece of control? Or is it something that I genuinely feel good about doing? So I think for me, it's been a journey. It's been a journey of learning how to love myself and knowing that it's okay to say no to things that don't feel good, that don't fit who you are, that maybe make you feel ingenuine. If it doesn't feel like it's genuinely coming from your heart, then it's not okay. And it's okay to say no to those things. And again, we are in a society where women aren't allowed to say no. We aren't allowed to take up space, or we haven't been, I would say, historically speaking. And I think definitely coming into my 40s, and honestly, once I hit 50, I joke that I'm like, I don't care. But I don't care what someone thinks of me, because I don't wrap my worth up in what someone feels about me. That is not to say that I'm not a good person. That is not to say that I don't, put my best foot forward. I definitely do. And I feel like most people that I meet feel how genuine I am. But also, if you're not being genuine with me, I have no problem cutting the ties and distancing myself from that relationship, because I'm not about being fake. If it's ingenuine, it's not for me. I want to build relationships, and I want to be in spaces and with people who are genuine and who aren't looking to just get something from me. I feel like I have a lot to offer, but that doesn't mean that I need to pour everything every day all at once into everyone else and feel depleted on my end. So, like I said, if saying no to something is a genuine response, then it's okay to do that. It's okay to say no to things that don't feel right in your heart. And again, it's an unlearning. It is not easy. It is something that I have worked on for a long time, because I would really go introspectively and say, oh my gosh, did I do something to hurt that person? What did I say wrong early on? If I said no to something and that person became displeased or distanced themselves, I would say in my mind, oh no, I did something wrong and I should fix it and I should make it better. And that doesn't all land on me, and it doesn't all land on you if you're that people-pleasing person. Relationships are two-way. And if that person or persons in your life are distancing themselves because you said no to something that didn't feel good to you, then maybe that's a step back you need to take from that relationship and reevaluate. Is that something that I need in my life? And work on yourself, right? It starts with self-love. And I think that that's something that I struggled with most of my life. I was good at giving that advice and saying, fill your cup up first and love yourself, and then you'll have more to pour into everyone else. But when you don't grow up with that worth or feeling worthy in that way, the self-love aspect is hard, and it's something you have to work on every day. And I think I'm finally getting to that stage of my life where self-love is first and foremost. I've raised my kids and I've made good decisions with them. I've made bad decisions as well. And the next episode coming up is kind of about that. But we as women and we as a society need to look at our mental health first. And if it's something that's making you sacrifice your mental health, then it's not worth it. So if bending over backwards and people pleasing constantly, whether it's at the workplace or whether it's in your personal relationships, whether it's in your immediate family, your core group, the people who raised you, if it is something that is draining you and being completely taxing on your health and mental health, then it's not worth it. And that is something that is an unlearning, and it takes time, and it takes therapy for me, and it takes all the things that I use in my toolbox, journaling and, groups that support other women and the wounds that we have within, and all those things that I talked about kind of in my last episode. It takes faith, whatever your faith looks like, and you utilizing all of those tools to help you become a better version of yourself, but also be true and genuine to who you're supposed to be. I will never not be the person whose love language is not acts of service. That is how I show my love. I think my kids appreciate, I say specifically when we get together for our big Christmas and we spend 4 days together, 5 days together, all at a vacation home rental, and we take time to be together. It's not just in the gifts that I give, but although they would say that those are very thoughtful and they appreciate those, but it's in the time that I spend and my husband spends putting together the meals every day and being in the kitchen and not only showing our boys what our holidays looked like growing up, and we merge, my Puerto Rican holiday with, my husband's Irish family's holidays and what that looks like in terms of food and culture. But it's something that I know genuinely makes them happy and makes them smile when we make those foods together and we're able to sit down and share those meals together. So I'm never not going to be the person who uses my love language for good, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm always going to be that person who is thoughtful and wants to show that person in my life that I love them in a genuine way. But what I will never be again is a people pleaser. I will never backtrack and be that person who says yes to everything because it makes the other person happy. And also, I won't be the person who sacrifices myself for someone else's selfish need to feel seen and feel heard and feel power, because that's what it ultimately comes down to, right? You are giving power to someone else if you are depleting yourself in a people-pleasing mode. And when it's more of an act of pressure, then it's certainly not worth it, and it's not right. And that's been very freeing for me. I'm not going to say it was easy in the beginning. I definitely struggled with that. As I said earlier on, I would start to be all in my head and overthink, what did I do? Did I hurt that person? But when you evaluate it very closely and that you're able to look at the person and their intention and their reason for wanting you to do or be that way, you see that it's really an act of pressure and not an act of service. Because when it comes from your heart and you're not pushed into it, that's the only time that it is genuine. And when it feels good in your soul, then that's when it's right. And that's when it's a genuine act of service. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. And I know that this probably resonates with a lot of people. I would also say that it probably resonates with people around my age, because that was that era of time where, you know, it was definitely that black and white. So I hope that that does resonate with people, that people understand and see that we are all in this together, that we're not alone in these feelings. And that leads me to a closing question. What is something you needed or need to unlearn? Or what is a lesson you needed to learn the hard way? Right? That is a big one. I think this was one of my biggest lessons that I needed to learn the hard way. That I needed to see that just because somebody was maybe the closest, person to me, that it wasn't necessarily that their intentions were genuine. That is a hard pill to swallow. But I know most of my biggest lessons I needed to learn the hard way. So, yeah, think about that. And please let me know what you think of this episode. If you've listened to past episodes and something resonates to you, I love hearing from you. This has been really great to kind of get that feedback and to know that we're all in this together and that we're not alone. So thank you so much for listening to the All in My Head podcast. And I will see you next time right here for another episode. Have a great day.